I know you got upset that Lena died. She had her moment. I think it was kind of premature for that character. But it was also necessary to be the catalyst for what happens in this episode, right? Yeah. But it's like I feel the weird thing about the show is that it feels like the instead of being part of the plot, they stand in the way of the plot. Did you notice that? Like they have to eliminate characters in this show. Like I never felt that way in Game of Thrones. It feels like in this show they have to eliminate characters for the plot to progress. Like eliminating characters isn't part of the actual progression. It's necessary to progress. Like the characters can't develop and they can't move forward if certain characters aren't removed. Like Lena had to be removed. Lord Strong had to be removed. You know what I mean? Otto had to be removed for a while. Now they brought him back. Now that it's convenient. I get it, but I'm talking about it even in the sense of the books. If this is how the books were written, they were written pretty poorly. You know, very different to me it seems from what I saw in Game of Thrones, which was also based on the books, right? Where every story arc for each character progressed almost seamlessly and seemed to what I liked the best about it was how they interwove how the stories got interwoven of the different characters, and it was just smooth. Like it would feel like it just happened and it was natural. Here it feels like very it felt like he wrote this as a backstory, obviously, to what comes later in Game of Thrones, because things needed to happen, not because he was really organically working towards a goal in mind. You know what I mean? Everything in this show so far feels very much compartmentalized, if that makes sense. See, so I was right. It was like a background kind of setup. It wasn't really its own thing, and you can really feel it in this, you know? It just goes to show, like, that if the source material isn't really good in terms of its novelization, these writers and these producers for these shows don't know how to put something together anymore. They're so blinded by the glitz and glamour of the cinematography, the costuming, the production design, the CG, you know, and the acting that they don't even really actually think of constructing a viable story anymore. And it really shows. I don't know. That being said, though, this episode was, I think, one of the better ones. One of my favorites. The progression of the characters finally seemed to take on a very realistic turn. I was also thinking that this show really, like, also compared to Game of Thrones, right? Remember, Game of Thrones, they had the petty squabbles of the different houses. But what made Game of Thrones stand out, in my opinion, was the fact that, number one, there was the fantasy element of the dragons, okay. But also in the sense that the dragons had been gone for a long time, and now they were going to be brought back because of Daenerys's story arc. But also the whole thing of the White Walkers, and that there was something evil coming from the north, right? The winter is coming. That was going to hopefully force these characters to put aside their petty squabbles for something that was essentially like life and death, right? The White Walkers really did a really good job of making it look like, I mean, that they were going to destroy all living beings if these people didn't figure out how to come together and use the dragons as well, of course. And this one, it just feels like it's just a petty squabble between two women, basically, you know? Yeah, it has real repercussions and it has a real realistic feel of consequences, but at the end of the day, the stakes are not as high. is what I'm trying to say. I don't know if you agree with that. I do like how they finally brought the kids into this drama in a very realistic way, in terms of how these kids are just trying to be kids and they're being used by their parents, treated as pawns for political future and political gain in the future, rather than really just raising them as kids to be the best they could be, you know? It's like, you need to be this because you were born this. You need to be that because you were born that. You can't get along with your cousin or your half brother, whatever it is, because of, you know, because of what's going to happen and because of how you're viewed once you become royal, you know? So they really shone in this episode, the kids. And so did Rhaenyra, in terms of, right, she lost her husband. Well, he's not her husband, right? She lost her lover. That was obviously a man that could protect her. And she's pretty much aware that at this point she has no friends in her corner. Laenor cannot be depended on. Look, he's breaking down, right? His sister dies and he can't handle it. And I get it. I don't begrudge him that. He really is useless to her. Even though he has a nice moment here where he realizes how he's been not attentive to his duties as a husband and future king consort. And Daemon does a great quality of being like, I'm so over all of this, but I'm just going to be observant. And that's why Daemon is superior, really, and probably the best one suited to rule and lead. Because rather than him trying to force people into his viewpoint, which is kind of Viserys' downfall, he just observes and reacts organically to what's happening in terms of what he thinks is going to be the best thing to position himself and his interests. Which, the only other person like that is Otto, which is why Otto wanted him removed. That makes him the perfect candidate for Rhaenyra, and we kind of saw that coming. You know, Rhaenyra knew that as a woman, she needed to entice Daemon on a sexual and intimate level for him to really feel committed to what she was proposing. At least this stays true to the dynamics that we have in society and in power structures and the power hierarchy, whether we like it or not, whether we agree to it or not. It's just the way it works. It's not something you can dismantle outright, especially when you don't have something else to replace it. What is it, Rhaenys? She realizes that her family is being fed to the fire for the power play that's going on between basically Alicent and Rhaenyra. Two people and two families that she doesn't really care about because they're not her own. She's never really cared about the fact that she should have been queen and that could have been her position. She cares actually about her kids and her grandkids and them having a life, you know, and a future in all of this. She feels very much like captive. She's one of the few people in this royal society that actually feels captive rather than manipulative, you know? And she gives Corlys a good option here. And here again, we have just different interests that are pitted against each other, right? Corlys is all about his ability to carry on his name. And she actually cares about her actual granddaughters now that they lost their mother. And she makes a good point to him, or thinks she's making a good point, by appealing to his sense of pride in wanting to maintain the family name into the future, but fails to recognize the realities, right? And it's interesting to see that. Like, it's not even about blood, right? She appeals to the sense of blood, of their bloodline, and the fact that his granddaughters are actually of his bloodline, while obviously the grandsons that are his sons in name are not literally his bloodline. And he's like, yeah, but that doesn't matter really in the end. It does. Blood actually doesn't even matter. What matters is the name. And he's got a point, right? As messed up as it is, he's got a good point. And that's why he rejects it. So this is a good stalemate. And mind you, it's husband and wife. And you would have thought that he would give in to her because he does care about her. But he doesn't. Because that means everything to him. So in that sense, he's just as bad, if not worse, than Viserys in terms that he doesn't seem to really care about sacrificing his own children for the sake of his name.
I want your mom to pass through Lane's line to Bela.
Right. Right.
To true glory of God. Declare it now, you will gather.
And she's really just really looking out for her granddaughters because she realizes now that no one's going to care for them. Daemon doesn't really care for them. They don't have a future if they don't have something to offer a suitor in the future, right? And that's Driftmark. And he should have seen the same thing. But no. So Rhaenyra takes the opportunity, right, to discuss with Daemon her proposal. As I've already said. And, it's a frank discussion between the two. And intimate.
Performed our
And genuine in a sense,
Felt good to be desired.
And Daemon is pragmatic. I mean, he doesn't really care for anybody, right? We've seen that he doesn't really care for anybody. He's all about himself. And we don't know if he ever will develop that ability. But he does understand what he needs to survive, what he needs to thrive. Until this moment, he had given up any idea of any concept of being part of the legacy of the Targaryens in the kingship role. And Rhaenyra kind of sparks that again, and that's what he cares about more than anything. Yeah, he has a natural attraction to her, but more than that, what matters is everything that she has to offer is attractive to him, is what it is. The whole package that she is attractive to him, appealing, and the gateway to his redemption arc for himself in his eyes. It's obviously going to lead to tragedy in some form. But he also sees that unlike Laena, who was a very honest person, caring person, Rhaenyra is just as capable as him to do what needs to get done, to do the most atrocious deeds, and that they can partner well in the accomplishment of these things. They can count on each other. Something that obviously was the issue with Laena, because she had her view, she had her opinion, she wanted to do what she wanted to do, and he wanted to do something different, and he knew that Laena was not the gateway for him to come back to Westeros as someone that he wanted to be. He's not going to come back to Westeros to be just another lord. He wants to be the best he can be if he's going to be coming back to Westeros. And Laena was never that option. She was just like the runner-up option that he accepted at the time. So that dynamic is what makes it unique between the two of them. as well as the actual natural sexual attraction that they have. But we know that Damon is really going to follow his own pursuits and is using her to make his dreams come true, as it were. It's interesting that they cut from that to Aemond, because even though he's very young at this point, and I don't know how it progresses in the actual stories or the books, but even though right now he's very young, but we can see that he's going to be a problem in the future. Just the way he interacts with children, right already off the bat, the fact that he can't take a joke, the fact that he has to be such a crybaby about things, the fact that he has to take things to heart that are meant to be for character growth, he's incapable of it. But he does have a determination in him, you know, like this whole fascination with the dragon, and the way he approaches the dragon, and the dragon warns him twice. He's actually committed to this concept that he has inherited of being a dragon rider, and he sees it as his liberation, as his way to be able to overcome those that would crush him. It is a bit of a crutch, clearly, because he gets so much ego out of this, you know, that it's what leads to the fight between the kids, which is not good at all. The fact that he was the catalyst for that goes to show that he's going to be the problem in the future, and the fact that he was being catered to by his mother as well. She made this problem get worse, but nonetheless, it is still an accomplishment on his part that he shows that despite the fact that he has no natural abilities, despite the fact that he isn't a good fighter, his determination, his single-minded determination to achieve something, is something to admire in and of itself. And also, it's something to be afraid of at this point, because Vhagar being on the side of the Hightowers is obviously going to be something short of tragic when it comes to the fact that we're going to be headed to a fight between them, way worse than what we saw in this episode. So the fact that he was able to win this dragon over to their side is very scary. I mean, we're talking about, this is supposed to be like one of the most ancient, if not the most ancient dragon at this point. So it's important for the plot in that respect. It's an important development, because it's going to be, I don't even think we've ever had dragons against dragons. And I'm assuming that's what's going to end up happening. The fact that she wakes up alone and he's not there already goes to show to the fact that this is a contractual agreement more than anything else, despite their actual attraction. But where it gets really interesting is where the kids get into it, because everybody here has a good point. You know, the daughters have a good point that he took the dragon. At no point did anybody even acknowledge the fact that Aemond should not have approached the dragon to begin with on so many levels. Nobody bothers to address it. Instead, they just focus on what they want. The fact that these parents use these kids for their own political ploys, even throughout this, is what's going to probably lead to these kids being traumatized and hating each other in the future, and leading to something similar to, it feels a lot like the War of the Roses in actual English history with the kingship, because the War of the Roses was just awful. It lasted for so long, did nothing to help unite the realm, and this really feels like it's going in that direction with these guys, with these kids. They get pretty brutal. I'm actually surprised at the violence that they ended up deciding to show on this. But it is HBO, so I guess now we're ready to watch kids beat the crap out of each other. And Viserys seems to be the only one here that cares about keeping the peace, understands the bigger picture, that they just look awful to be attacking each other in this manner. That everything he's worked hard to achieve in his entire during his entire reign is about to be dismantled over a kid fight, you know, that got out of hand. And the fact that Alicent didn't even, for one, I mean, at this point, I don't. Yeah, there's some other aspect of this. There's an aspect of motherly concern for her kid, but it goes beyond that with Alicent at this point. She's just enraged on such a level that she is losing her humanity. She's becoming more and more like a Cersei. It feels like a repeat of Cersei as well, in a sense, because that's what Cersei was. We didn't really get to it till later seasons when we found out the prophecy that she had as a kid, that she was going to lose her kids in the future. This scene played out so well. The sheer horror that Rhaenyra has in this scene at the thought that her kids are going to be permanently damaged just because Alicent wants that to be the case was really well done. And even Viserys has a sense, shows a sense of dread towards Alicent, but I mean, I said it when I saw it the first time. His reaction to Alicent should have been like, you know what, I'm done with you.
You tell me, boy. What did you?
And I also like that in this scene, everybody tries to pretend as if the king was a moron, as if he didn't know what really was going on with Rhaenyra. And he basically reveals that what's important about all of it in the end is the relationships.
Could not find sleep, had gone out to walk.
It's not what actually happened. Just like Corlys acknowledged that the fact that those kids are not Laenor's actual blood does not really matter. What matters is the name they carry. And Viserys is of the same. I mean, it's of the same understanding, right? And also, we kind of see the generational issue difference here. It's kind of the same one we have in real life between boomers and millennials and Gen Zers now, Gen Xers and Gen Zers, where the old guard, I wouldn't say so much the boomers, but before the boomers, the great generation, they understood the necessity to put their personal needs aside for what was holding society together. Even if it cost them and it hurt them, they did that, and you see that with Viserys and Corlys, and that's just falling apart with these with their own children, and it's kind of what we see in every family in modern day era. It's very modern. It's a very modern show, despite the trappings.
Our family.
And I really admire that Viserys, despite the fact that he understands exactly what's going on and how his own wife is turning against him, his daughter is being beset on. He stands up for her to the point where he's like, I have to make a decree that anybody that questions the birth of her children will have to be severely punished. And in true fashion,
Goodwill do not make him whole.
Alicent did not stop. Oh, I love this moment right here. His reaction is awesome here.
I know, Alicent. But I cannot restore his eye.
No, because it's been taken.
What would you have me do?
The sense of desperation. So well done. And honestly, what Alicent did, anybody else would have been hung for treason at that moment. I also love how she even brought Sir Criston into it, and he tried to restrain. She called upon him. It's interesting because the whole thing with Sir Criston is that he is faithful to his vows as a knight, and he's mad at Rhaenyra because she took that away from him, right? But Alicent was supposed to restore that for him in a sense, and yet here she's doing the same thing Rhaenyra did, right? In a sense, what Alicent is doing to Sir Criston here is no different than Rhaenyra sleeping with Sir Criston, because she's asking him to break his vow to harm a child, and that's where she messed up, because Sir Criston's never going to do that again. He's not going to make that mistake for a woman again. And that's what he says, I am here to protect you. So if anybody attacks you, I will protect you, but you can't order me to hurt another person or a child. That's not going to happen, right? And here's where that's why she takes that dagger from the king himself, the dagger, right? And attacks Rhaenyra. That allows Sir Criston to step into action. And Daemon, again, who has been playing the role of observant in this entire time, understands not so much really out of for defense for Rhaenyra, but defense for what she represents to him at this point, and stops Sir Criston. The aerial shot of it, the aerial shot of this is great because it helps you see the positioning. Because one of the things that's very I don't want to say obnoxious, but difficult with the blocking of these shots and these scenes is the fact that there's so many people you really can't tell, and the lighting is purposely dark because of it's trying to imitate that medieval feel and look, that it can get messy real quick. So the aerial shot at least gives you a quick positioning of where everybody is at the moment of that action. So that was smart. She drew blood, you know? And I would have thought, my impression here too was that she's like, well, you just messed up. You lost your life. And Viserys, that's where he fails, because he should have taken her life. Otto is such a scumbag. If we ever had any doubts of what really Otto wanted to be as a hand, it finally got revealed in this episode when he finally talked to her. He's the only one like Daemon that's observant, but he will never step in. That's the difference between him and Daemon. Oh, here's that aerial shot. He will never step in. He will let his own kids die to preserve his own hide. He kind of really harkens back to Lannister. I forgot the name of the father. He was so well done, so well played, and such a jerk. One of the best scenes was Tyrion killing him in the privy. But now all the lines have been drawn. Again, very visually well done, right? You got Sir Criston and Alicent on one side. You got Daemon and Rhaenyra on the other. The lines have been drawn. It's war now, by all means and purposes. There's no going back from this moment. And this was interesting because the dynamic of father and son, Otto is the one that drove Alicent to this craziness. He made her paranoid, right? Way back when he lost his position and he thought all he cared about was himself, and instead of offering comfort to his daughter, he imbued in her this sense of paranoia, right? That no matter what, Rhaenyra was going to hurt her, was going to destroy her and her children, kill her and her children. And that was further cemented by the fact that Rhaenyra lied to her so she could never believe in her again. And here she's expecting him to chastise her, right? Because she's always tried to be the good little girl. And that's kind of been her motif and what drives her character. She thinks she's being a good person. She thinks she's being the good one. Her paranoia is out of concern, right? And he tells her, no, I am glad to see that you have shown that you are capable of as much deviousness and literal blood-curdling cruelty, if necessary, as me. So it changes the dynamic that they have as daughter and son and father. But it also kind of shows you finally, for once, who's the mastermind behind all of this, right? It's this man right here. However, she is very much her father's daughter. As, and I think we'll see that as it develops, she's going to reveal that more and more. And it's interesting that in this scene he tells her, hey, she's worried, she thinks it's over for her. By all means and purposes, it should have been over for her. She should be hung for what she did, right? It is treason. And he's like, don't worry, you got him by the balls. Just play the good wife. So now it's also kind of also like Star Wars-ish, where he's like the emperor. Like, he is definitely now going to coach. Now that he's seen what she's capable of, he doesn't see himself as, he's got an apprentice now, you know? He can mold her to be what he needs her to be. What I do like about Rhaenyra as a character, and as a female character more than anything, and what I feel honestly shows more strength. This is how you write a strong female character. She doesn't have to be swashbuckling with a sword and fighting everything in front of her and telling men to listen to her, but rather she forms alliances according to her strengths and weaknesses. You know, she formed this alliance with Laenor. He's proven to be a bit of a liability. But she actually has some sympathy for him. She actually shows that she cares about him as a person, and I think that's the difference between her and Daemon that's going to probably lead them to put them at odds with each other at some point in the future. Either that, or she's going to completely be dehumanized and have to let go of it, because that's the whole thing about power. You really can't be human. You can't care about people and want to be sitting on the Iron Throne. That's why Viserys is having such a hard time failing. But she does genuinely care for people, and genuinely, even though she understands what she needs from them, she begrudges the fact that she needs it. But she accepts that it's how the game is played, and tries to forge real alliances, not just for her own gain at the expense of someone, but for mutual gain. You know? And he's lost everything at this point. He lost his sister. He's realized that his way of life is not gaining anything for him or for her or for this alliance that they forged. And he's recommitting himself, but it came at the worst time. Again, the show, the one thing I have to say about it is that it feels like they have to get rid of characters in order for the plot to progress. It's the only really annoying thing about it. Like, Laena had to go, and now Laenor has to go, right? He can't be part of what's going to come next. For Rhaenyra and Daemon to be able to move forward, he needs to go. I do find it interesting, and it's unclear who decided that he wouldn't die, because I totally thought they were going to sacrifice him. When she and Daemon discussed this, that he needs to go, basically, I really thought, okay, Rhaenyra at this point, either because she doesn't care or because she realizes it's either me or him, so it's going to be me. She's fine with getting rid of Laenor, and then we find out, no, he doesn't. They don't get rid of him. So how did that happen? We don't know. Was it Rhaenyra convinced Daemon? Did Rhaenyra convince Daemon not to kill him in the end, to find an alternative option? Or did Daemon realize that, you know, that could be a thing that was an option to begin with? We would think that Rhaenyra is the one that said, like, well, let's not kill him. Let's give him an option to go away. Because remember that Sir Criston gave her that option when she was younger, 10 years ago. He told her we could go to Essos and have our own life as average people and leave all this nonsense behind, and she turned it down. So it would make sense that it would come to mind to her as an option for Laenor in this instance, rather than Daemon. and the way this finishes is really good as well. What's this guy's name? The lame guy, I forget. Laris, like something like that. He's an interesting character as well. He's just as bad as Otto, I would say, if not even worse. He's possibly the worst character in the show. Because he actually wants to sit on the Iron Throne and he doesn't care what he has to do. He's completely manipulating everybody around him. He has an infatuation with her that's clearly sexual in a way. But more importantly, he just sees her as a means to an end for himself. His ultimate goal is to be the king himself. And if it won't be accepted, or if it's not possible, then at least he has to be the one pulling the strings of whoever sits on the throne, which at this point, that's why he's supporting Alicent. Because she's the only one that listens to him and is high up enough that can grant him the access that he needs. And she thinks that she can keep him at bay, but she's got another thing coming, I think. So here they plot together a meeting of the minds, you might say, you know, and it's important and significant because of how it forges that new alliance and that new partnership. We see that again, unlike him and Laena, him and Rhaenyra are going to be able to work together actively, which is really what turns him on more than anything. Because he does have that aspiration inside of him as well. But unlike someone like Laris, right, if that's the name, I forget, who is using manipulation to get something he never had a claim, Daemon did have a claim that was denied him, in a sense, or could have a claim at least. And it was circumstances and bad choices that led him away from that. And it kind of gives him a redeemable arc in that sense, you know? He was cocky, he made mistakes, he was sobered by those mistakes. So now he could come back, instead of trying to be this swashbuckling hero, he can come back through strategy with his niece. And that's why he's like, we gotta talk brass tacks. You know, if you want to make this happen, Laenor has to go. So we have this setup. I like the intercutting. It was effective. And because usually these things are these montages, they get really lame. They feel like they're just stalling for time. Yeah. So we have this battle. And we think that it's over for Laenor. And again, it's tragic because from this perspective of Rhaenys, she's lost everything. That family has been... The Valyrian family is, by all means and purposes, defeated. In shambles. But I have a feeling Rhaenys is not going to just... It's not over for her. She's a strong person. I do like this ritual. I do feel that it has a very organic feel to it. It is heartfelt. It does feel like, remember I like the contrast that they do in these episodes with traditions and rituals as well. We had the big dinner banquet when she was gonna get married to Laenor. Everybody was there. You know, it was a big time affair. And it felt so fake, and it felt so distant. It felt like everybody was just there to have a good time and have something to eat. It didn't feel like anything was going to come of it. But here we have something that really feels genuine and true. It feels like these two really have a connection with each other. They're really forming a bond, that they really are going to try to achieve something together. And that they're capable of doing it. I like I like the costume design for this. I rarely comment on it, but it has a real genuine feel about it, you know, in every aspect of it. The blood, the headdress, everything. But anyway, that's the cliffhanger. This is where we leave it off, and we shall see what actually picks up. But even though these two are going to Essos, I don't think it's going to be the end of them. It just feels like, I don't know, these guys can't stay away from drama. He's going to come back for some reason or other at the worst time. But again, apart from the fact that they have to keep eliminating characters to progress the plot points, there's still enough there that we can look forward to in terms of the character development and the dynamics between specifically the Alicent Rhaenyra ones, but also Daemon and Rhaenyra, Viserys and his daughter, and Viserys and his wife, and how the kids are going to play an important part in all of that. Now we've seen Aemond develop into having a dragon, so he's a foe. Larys' own and Otto's own as masterminds of it all. At some point, they're going to come to a head with each other, I would think, because I don't even think Otto is aware of him at this point. So these are all good things that are in the next episode, I would hope, and before the end of the season, we should see develop. So it's finally developing into a story, even though it's still, again, unlike Game of Thrones, where we had an actual life-threatening event, which was the White Walkers. We don't have that here. It's really about a squabble between two strong women. It's finally starting to pick up momentum and pick up depth and dimension. So